Okay, so we're back with another episode of Biz Mindz, and on this episode, we have my friend Anthony Joosten, owner of CSquare Recruitment. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you, even welcoming me.
Yeah, of course. So tell us, how did you get into the recruitment industry?
Okay, so getting into recruitment was a bit by accident, I would say. I was in enterprise sales before, so I sold software to various different businesses, basically. And then the owner of the firm that I went to work for, he's the one that approached me and basically just did everything right. He touched on things that matched with my background, with my aspirations, and just really approached me the right way. So he poached me away from enterprise sales, which was pretty hard to do because it's pretty lucrative, right? Mm-hmm. So anyways, I took the step because everything aligned really well. He touched on my international background and everything else. So I went to work for the firm. I worked for that firm for about 3 years, I would say. And then just like, I think most entrepreneurs is like, at some point you either do it as well as the best performer in a company you work for, or you maybe do it better or similar, but you have different ideas you'd like to implement, and just see an opportunity and just kind of jump in it. So that's kind of what I did.
Yeah. So you were in sales and then transitioned into the recruitment, right?
Yeah, that's right. And what happened was, I remember when I first started in the retained executive search space within recruitment, because obviously there's lots of different areas. There's staffing, there's lower level recruitment, contingency recruiting is usually what that's called, and then you have executive search, which is kind of like the highest level within that world. Sales skills are really important, because you're sitting across very high level people and need to be able to build trust pretty quickly. You need to be able to be an expert in the field that you're talking about and really differentiate yourself to basically to convince people to pay you throughout the process rather than just when you deliver a product. So anyways, from very early on, I was good at bringing in the contracts. I was very bad. I couldn't save my life I couldn't place a person to save my life, basically. It's not until I started thinking like a recruiter that I started placing people and really started making the company money.
Right.
So, yeah.
And do you think that how important do you think sales is in business, and if somebody wants to open up their business?
I think sales kind of comes back in every single part in your life, whether it's negotiating with your kid to get them to get into bed, to brush their teeth before they get into bed. And in work, same thing. You're trying to build enough respect and trust with the person to get them to offer you or give you their hard-earned dollars, basically. And sales, I think sales is the skill that allows you to transfer the trust and put the skills that you have into words. I think that's really what sales is.
I have a lot of questions when it comes to the staffing industry, and because to me it's very interesting. I know that everybody that's in staffing or owns a staffing company, it could be done differently, right? The recruitment, what industry they're focused on, and are you focused on a specific industry with your company, or is it more so the individual that you're recruiting?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think you're right. There are a lot of segments within recruitment, within employee fulfillment, basically. Part of that comes because everybody is trying to differentiate themselves from their competitors. And over time, you start to get these subcategories within recruitment, basically. So part of it is just a natural result of people trying to differentiate themselves. And some of them are also just administratively, they just don't make sense to do them all just because of the different steps within the process. So for us, I think the niche is definitely, first of all, the executive search. So I would say manager level and above. Some even go as far as director level and above. But looking at our portfolio of clients and positions we fill, there's definitely enough key account manager positions and that type of roles that we work on. I think underlying it may come down to, is the position impactful enough on the organization? That's sometimes where it comes down to. And of course, the salary does play a role. At some point, the white glove service that is expected and offered in executive search, that kind of level of service needs a level of salary range to justify the kind of service.
Right. Is there a certain company, or does a company need to be a certain size to hire your company to bring, great talent to their organization? Do they have to be a certain size, or is there an ideal client, for you that I know it's more based on the position, right? And the level of the position, but industry specific, are you seeing that you guys are staffing a certain industry more than another?
Yeah. So there's kind of a lot there. So I'm gonna maybe first take a step back, what we sort of focus on, and then I can come back to your question. So us as a firm, we very early on decided to focus on European companies expanding into the US, or looking at entering the market in the United States, or expanding their footprint here, basically. The reason for that is I grew up in Belgium. I moved here when I was 22. So shortly after graduating, I came here, basically sort of chasing the American dream, like most of us who move here do. And I, early on in the recruiting world, when I got recruited into that recruitment firm, I realized that if I connect with business owners in Belgium, let's say, or in the Netherlands or in France, where you have a company who has an entity here in the United States, they have a very successful product, or some kind of product. So let's say you have a company that has a successful product in Europe, and they now want to start selling that product in the United States. They very often need guidance early on, just because it's such a different market. Mm-hmm. And I felt like a lot of that guidance and cultural bridge gapping was very natural for me, because first of all, I went through it myself, right? Mm-hmm. I had to adapt to the US market and learn things. But number two, I had the advantage of having worked for some pretty prestigious companies in the United States. So in a very American kind of culture, mm-hmm. learning how to interview, how to write your resume to be attractive to a hiring manager. Then being a manager myself for one of these companies, I had to interview people, and I learned how to read resumes and so forth. All things that an entering Belgian organization never got a chance to do. Mm-hmm. So we used that basically as our differentiator already, mm-hmm. to differentiate ourselves from all the other executive recruiters in the US. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did early on. Then to come back on your question about how big does a company need to be, the reason I wanted to touch on the European piece is because it does make a difference. If we're talking about a company who's looking to hire their first VP of sales, for example, it makes sense, but only if there is some kind of backing to justify paying an executive search firm to hire that kind of person, because you really need a proven track record to know that your product is going to sell, and that it's so you need some kind of maturity in that company to justify.
So it has to be a certain size company, or a company that has a certain amount of years in the market.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you just happen to have a very successful app or something like that. So we have had clients that are in very early stages. They just received funding basically. Yeah. But again, there's a proven product there that people are willing to invest money in. So that is your indicator as well. Right. In any case, most companies, they do have a level of maturity already. So they have a very successful product. They have many clients. Oftentimes they're already selling in the United States, but just from overseas, and they now want to basically boost that exposure. So they hire their first person here. On the other flip side, a lot of our clients are very prestigious companies. So they are the kind of companies that own cycling teams in Europe. So everybody knows them, especially if you live in Europe, and they may already have 300, 400, 500 employees here in the US. But they want to make an effort to maintain the European DNA, for example. Mm-hmm. That's another driver for them to to work with us, basically.
Right.
What's the like the business model? How do you guys make money, basically?
Yeah, great question. So just to simplify it, because
it's a lot.
Yeah, for me, this is obvious things, but you're right. It's a good question. So typically, the way we invoice a client is based on a percentage of the person's salary.
Mm-hmm.
So if a person gets paid $100,000 a year, we take a percentage, or we don't take a percentage. The client pays us a percentage based on the salary they're offering.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we kind of off camera, we're already kind of talking about it, but you asked a great question, which was, is it coming out of the person's salary or not? And I think the best way to first of all, no, that's the answer. And the for the skeptics out there, basically, that maybe companies are still deducting it off their job offer, kind of hidden into the job offer. Really, the way candidates are safeguarded is the same way real estate is safeguarded. There's a market price for everything.
Mm-hmm.
If a CEO for a 800 employee company, on average in Monroe, Ohio, for example, gets paid $350,000, which is very easy to research that. If that's the going rate, the company is not able to offer $250 to cover our fee, basically. Because the candidate's never going to go for it,
So they pay the person they're bringing on the $350, and then you guys a percentage for bringing that person on.
Correct, and that's invoiced to the client, basically. So that's essentially the business model, and there are some deviations from that, but that's essentially what it comes down to.
That's the business model in terms of generating revenue for the company.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the different segments within recruitment, for example, so staffing is typically a percentage on the hourly rate, because staffing is typically based on hourly rate employees. So it could be security staff, for example. It could be factory labor, which again, they're all kind of hourly. So you base percentage on the hourly rate. Then if you get into more permanent staffing or permanent recruitment, you're usually always based on a percentage on the annual rate. And then the biggest differentiator between contingent and executive search is contingency recruiters, they get paid at the end when a person is hired, whereas an executive search firm, they get paid throughout the process. You might pay the same amount of money over, after you place somebody, but we bill along the way.
You guys bill along the way.
Correct. For the most part. Yeah. For the most part, we are an executive search firm. So that means we bill along the way. What that allows us to do is dedicate more resources and just take more risk on a certain position rather than us just shooting resumes at people. The experience is very, very different for a hiring manager.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Because so what about, let's say that I'm a company and I need a CEO. I'm looking for a CEO, and that person is going to get paid just random numbers. Let's say $200,000.
Yep.
Then I bring you and your team on, right? You guys are still doing the work to find that individual. So that's also another fee, or is it just when you find the individual?
Yeah. So that's, if you technically, obviously, the recruiter gets paid for the whole process, right? The research, all the presentations, the hiring, the recruiting, the interviews that we conduct, the phone screens and so forth. Technically, you could say you get paid for all of that. It's just the way it's invoiced is we will invoice along the way as you make progress in that search. Like, for example, you start up, we charge like a startup kind of fee, for example.
Right.
We would charge something when we present your 5 potential candidates to you. If you like these candidates that we presented, the 3 or 5, and you invite them all on site for interviews, we would invoice another installment.
Got it.
And then when somebody gets hired, another installment. Whereas a contingent recruiter, they typically will not get to invoice anything until someone gets hired. Now, instinct would then tell you, well, then just always work with a contingent recruiter. I think the difference with it is like white glove service versus a diner.
Right.
You go to a fine dining restaurant, you're expected to be called ahead of the time, like, hey, traffic is heavy, just making sure they look after everything, right? If you go to a 2 or 3 star Michelin restaurant, they look after making sure that you get there safely. They greet you at the door, they take your jacket, they hang it away, lead you to your table, you sit in the most comfortable chairs, soft linens, beautiful interior, everything is looked after. Whereas a diner, it's all about getting your stomach filled, and not to discount one or another. Sometimes I just want to get in and out 100%. Other times I want to go on a date with my wife. I want to have a proper experience, or I'm bringing a client to a dinner. I want to have everything looked after, basically. It's the exact same with the recruiting world. Some positions are just too important to wing it. And that's when they decide to have real professionals, expert experience for the client and for the candidates. I think that's the biggest thing as well. The candidate experience is not always great on the contingency side, just because they might approach 100 candidates 6 months before to gather resumes as much as possible in the hopes that a job opens up that's in alignment. Well, these candidates sit around waiting for 6 months to get something. And then what happens is these companies, they will hire 6 contingent recruiters, and all 6 of these firms get to submit resumes. So you're like 1 out of 80 resumes that get submitted to these clients. Half the time you don't even hear back because the contingent recruiter is already too busy moving forward with the next job or collecting the next resume. So these candidates stay in the dark. Whereas because we're so specialized, they'll get white glove service until we're telling them, hey, you didn't get the job.
Is it typically a long process to find that high level exec?
I actually love that question because it's a huge focus of our firm. We want it to be as quickly and painless as possible. Of course, the sourcing and interview portion, you can typically expect it to take anywhere between 10 to 30 days, let's say. So our process internally takes 10 to 20 days, let's say, or 10 to 30 in worst case scenarios. But usually it's when the candidate interviews for the first time with the client, that's when a ticking time bomb sort of starts. These candidates are now heavily engaged in this process. Their mindset also shifts, meaning they are probably answering to other recruiters too. If another person coming up with a job, they probably entered that interview process as well. So now you're competing with other companies and so forth. So speed is super important. Number one, to not lose them to another competitor, and also just to keep their experience positive. The worst thing is you interview for a job and then it takes you 2 weeks to get any kind of feedback. Maybe they ask you to submit some kind of sales presentation as a second step, right? Like things really getting serious. You're going on site, you have to do a sales presentation for the hiring team, and they take 2 weeks to get back with you. Oh, that's the worst. Because most of the time people then start to think, oh, I must have really bombed it.
And you guys are in the middle of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can get a quicker response.
Yeah, well, we try, but sometimes, there are scenarios where we're also banging down on the door of the client to get feedback for these candidates, because we do genuinely feel bad for them. And these candidates, they come knocking on our door every 2-3 days because they're comfortable with us, right? We build a relationship. So, we try to work as much as possible with the clients who are willing to put their best foot forward in the process. I think that's another differentiator between a good executive search firm and maybe a weaker one would be someone who really sets clear expectations before they start sourcing. Part of our client onboarding process is helping the client define a good hiring process. What's that going to look like? Who's going to speak with them? How long is it going to take for us to get feedback? Is there a panel interview? Is there an assessment that the candidates need to take? Do they have to generate some kind of sales presentation? If you communicate all that stuff to a candidate beforehand, 4 or 5 or even 6 interview steps is not the problem. It's the lack of clarity before they get entered into the process. That's the big issue.
Let's see. How long did it take you to get profitable in this business? Is it a business model that makes you money fast, or it takes you need a certain amount of time to?
It depends on how you approach it. If you want to grow as a firm, it is very tough to be profitable, which is something we're trying to do, right? So we are always trying to hire the next best recruiter and grow the list of recruiters basically internally. If you decide to just do this self-employed, if you're pretty good at it, that's another big differentiator. If you're pretty good at it and you're sincere with your clients and you're doing a good job, it can be profitable because your expense and your overhead is low. Again, we've taken the route where we want to grow a team. For us, we're now a team of 7, for example, which is, if you see executive search firms, either they stay a 1 or 2 man show for 25 years, or they grow to be a team of 50 over, let's say, the course of 10 years. Of course, you have turnover and these kind of things. But yeah, if you take the route,
reinvestment in the company as you grow.
Like we're spending a lot of money on AI tools to optimize our work, obviously, which results in better candidate experience, better client experience, just overall cleaner communication to both parties. So all those things, they cost a lot of money. So it's if you want to do it right and you want to build a sellable business at some point, or maybe you want to pass it down on your kids, for example, if you want to build something like that, it can be tough to be profitable.
Is it So I have a couple questions. I'll start with the first one of, have you had a moment where, or an incident where you get hired on, but you weren't able to fill that position?
100%. I mean, there are failures in our business too, whether it's a marketing team that promises X amount of views or X amount of new clients and maybe misses that mark.
Yeah.
We have the same thing. We might promise a solid shortlist in 3 weeks, for example, and we come to the client and that shortlist, out of the 5 people we presented, only one of them is kind of a decent match. Oftentimes, though, that's a misunderstanding in communication early on. So it's like, fast means slow, slow means fast. So in the beginning, you got to go slow, making sure you understand the job and that everything is well defined. Some of the tools that we use today have been developed over the years from those failures. So as long as you take those failures and try to build something better on top of it, I think it's okay. If you just fail and you blame the client, which a lot of these recruiters out there do, they say, the hiring manager is difficult. They don't know what they want, or whatever the case may be. Very often that's not the case. I always try to self-reflect. What did we miss? What are we not checking on in the interviews that we're conducting with our candidates? Did we not properly spend the time with the client to lay out an interview process, losing candidates to competitors and so forth? So failure is part of the business, like any other company fails, but you gotta own it and build upon it.
Is it difficult to be a young recruiter because people might look at you like you don't have the experience? Like, does age play a big factor? Like, let's say I want to be a recruiter for your company. I'm 28 years old. Does a CEO who I might be recruiting that's in their 40s or 50s, let's say, and a company that's making X amount with 150, 200 employees that are looking for that CEO to lead them, are they really going to listen to someone in their 20s that's the middleman between such an important, move that's about to happen?
Yeah, it can be. It certainly can be. It's hard to quantify because it's hard to say if a client doesn't want to work with you, why they didn't work with you. It could be because your price is too high, or it could be because they don't believe in your value, or maybe they have a buddy that also does this kind of work and they just needed 2 quotes to present to their boss to show, see, look, I shopped around, but really they were always going to hire the other firm anyways. It's hard to always quantify why you didn't get the business. And so being too young, for example, it could be. I mean, there's lots of discrimination in business all over the place. Women don't get hired because they're women. There's the whole race issue. There's a lot of reasons why someone might not get a position or an interview. But just like I would advise every woman and every minority or whatever is, ignore the noise, go for it anyways. I've been very successful in recruitment.
In your 20s, right?
In my 20s still. Yeah, exactly. I started CSquare when I was 28. And I was already very successful in enterprise sales, which also is kind of dominant in a bit of an older demographic. Most of my colleagues were 38 and up, basically, and I was 24. I was in pretty prestigious companies selling very complex software solutions. It's just, just like anything, I think if you prepare yourself really well for your interview or for your sales call or for the podcast, prepare well, make sure you know what you're talking about. If you don't know the answer, let people know you don't know the answer, go back to find the answer. I think as long as you ignore your shortcomings and just make sure they are a non-issue, then I don't think it is an issue.
Right. Yeah. Right. Let's shift a little bit to business in general. Do you think that anybody can be a business owner, that being a business owner is for everybody?
Okay, so my opinion on like entrepreneurship, business owner, basically is you have purebreds and you have aspiring, and then you have the ones that like the idea of being a business owner. Purebreds, I think you're always destined to be, and you always will end up being one most of the time because they don't make very good employees. And I know a lot of people have said this before me, so it's not like I'm sharing anything groundbreaking, but I to the core believe that. I noticed for myself that I was one of those because I would make President's Club at the software sale company, and I'd be at the President's Club trip, and I still didn't feel satisfied. I was like, well, I want to be the one to give out the award, not win the award. And it at the time, of course, I was also young, and practicing gratitude is not always easy when you're young, but they're signals. So I would say, anybody listening to this, if you have a good accomplishment, but it's in the category of employee, and you don't feel happy and ecstatic for the next week of getting that award, for example, it's probably a good sign that maybe at some point you're going to be destined to do something else. Then you have aspiring entrepreneurs who just don't know what to do, right? They want to be self-employed, but they don't know what to do or which idea would work well with their skills and so forth. We also talked about that off camera. I think it's just a matter of go work for a company, some kind of industry you may already have some interest in. See if it clicks. Are you outperforming most of your peers? And do you still have some ideas you'd like to apply to that industry and your boss won't let you? Well, maybe that's a good point or an opportunity to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to jump into doing my own thing. So that's kind of the aspiring entrepreneur. And then you have people who like the idea of it, but I don't know everybody's made for it. There is a lot of ups and downs, but the downs are really low. The ups can be very high, but the downs can be very low, and they can go on for a long time. There is no steady trickle of paycheck every 2 weeks. If things go bad, you could go months without it, and it can create some kind of anxiety that only people like us really know what that feels like. And if you're not made for it, within 6 to 12 months, they'll probably resort back to what they are comfortable in. They'll go back to work for a company in that industry, which is okay. Not everybody needs to be a business owner. In fact, we can't build businesses without good employees. Like I was always a bad student, for example, which is another thing. Yeah, example.
But on purpose.
Yeah, I think it's a great indicator for somebody who doesn't.
What do you consider a bad student?
Somebody who procrastinates on homework. Somebody who
bad grades
can be part of that, although I know some entrepreneurs who always had straight A's as well. Some entrepreneurs, one person particularly in Belgium, he was like a high performer in school as well. He just didn't like doing it, but he still did it. So grades can be a part of it. I think the procrastination is definitely part of it, so putting it off to the last minute.
I agree, by the way.
Being bored, you're bored because not all topics interest you.
Yeah.
And
A lot of things didn't make sense to me.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
I think all three of us share the same thing about being bad students. Well, I was a bad student. I know,
I was a good
I
student.
know you
until
were a
things-
really bad.
No,
No, I'm kidding.
I was a good student until like things started, because I've always been a thinker, right? So things weren't making a lot of sense to me in terms of like how life works, and hearing my teachers talking about something they didn't accomplish. So I don't know. There was a disconnect, big disconnect. So yeah, I just like I'm good at math, but I didn't care about A plus B equals, like all those type of like geometry. I could have been, good at it, but I was just not putting the work,
That's what I was going to go into. I think typically entrepreneurs, they're in school, they can get good grades, but in the topics they enjoy.
Yeah.
If you're really interested in biology or geography or math or whatever, literature, you're going to do really well there because you're over focused on that topic. You're going to be the best listener in class. You're going to work on that topic when you get home. You're going to be researching on your own, go to the library and get a book on that topic and so forth. It's just we struggle with doing the things we don't like. And that's where if you want to build a good business, that's what it's about. Identifying your shortcomings and just hire out the things you're not good at. Identify those early on and hire somebody who does enjoy those things.
What do you think winning in business is to you?
I think it's defined different for everybody. I think some people will define success as having a big team and having a big business that at some point they can sell or pass on to family members. I think for other people, it's about freedom, where they only need to work 4 or 5 hours a day and they get to play golf for a living, basically. So I think which is important. I think it's important to define your success as early as possible, within the first few years of being self-employed, and then just work towards that vision. But don't, if you deep down feel like you'd be happy if you had a business where you had to work 4 hours a day and you get to play 3 rounds of golf a week with a client, for example, if that is success and happiness to you, don't mirror yourself to me, for example, who's looking to build an enterprise kind of executive search firm. There's no good or bad. I think it just needs to match your aspirations.
Is that what it is to you, being successful in business? Like, do you feel like you're successful right now?
I think we do a good job for the clients that we have. I think we deliver high quality. So in that perspective, I would say we are successful. The other part of the success is definitely in the works. It's like loading kind of thing. We're always looking to hire the next best recruiter, the highest biller in the next firm, basically trying to bring those people on board and ultimately compete with executive search firms who have 100, 200, 500 employees, basically.
Do you think money buys happiness?
Well, I think the lack of money is like a passport to misery. Like I think it definitely makes life harder if you don't have money. So it's easier to do the things you like if you have some money. But certainly a miserable person can be rich and still be miserable. I think in part the discipline that you're applying to your business to get that money, I think it's important to apply that discipline to the rest of the parts of your life as well. Whether it's your married life.
That question is always so.
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit different for other people, but I think it's, if you apply the same discipline to your health, to your kids, to the relationship with your wife, as long as you do all those things, I think you can be, generally happy.
Have you bought happiness?
Yeah, but I think it's oftentimes small things like, let's go to a nice dinner, for example, on a week. Maybe we had a bad week, but I want to go out to dinner to get my mind off of that. I think that's a part of buying happiness a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like,
I buy happiness all the time.
Yeah.
I do.
So what does that look like for you?
For me, it's so I think that success to me, it's family, right? It starts with the family. Like I feel like you can't build a successful business if you this is what it means to me. It doesn't mean that it's the right thing, but you can't build a successful business if you don't build a successful family. That's where it starts. Then from there, everything is a plus, right? Then you can go out and have fun, right? Doing whatever you want to do. You can succeed, you can fail in business, but you're already successful on the main thing. But when I say I buy happiness all the time, it's because everything we do requires to pay, right? So let's say, for example, one of my nieces, she lives in Orlando. I bought the ticket. I flew her here, surprising her mom. Just looking at them, hugging each other, that's happiness to me.
Right.
And to them, right? So those little things, I think I try to trigger that all the time for everything I do. And I just use it as a tool,
I think you can almost extend that story though, because I feel like what you're describing is almost like a philanthropic activity. So at some point, I don't think you're buying happiness anymore, unless if you were to say that, Warren Buffett, who donates half of his wealth or 90% of his wealth or whatever he said, whatever he pledged to do, is buying happiness. I mean, maybe it is, but
it's tricky because I feel like I think that we've been maybe wired or instantly the answer that comes into most people's minds when you say does money buy happiness is no, because we associate it with if you're unhappy without money, when you have money you're going to be unhappy, which that makes a lot of sense. But I think when you look at it from a transaction standpoint, right, like just within the actual, not going deep into it, just does money buy happiness? Well, if a date or a pizza night or anything like that, it's transaction based, because if you weren't able to do it, right? If you weren't able to transact, then you have that kind of thought in your mind, like, dang, I can't even do this. Or, you look at a dinner menu, and if you go out to dinner and then if you're looking at it and you're like stressing like the prices on there, then that brings some sort of anxiety or some sort of not at peace anymore, because now, and then especially if you're inviting people, now you're like, oh man, well, how much do they, hopefully they don't order this, right? Like it just brings so much unnecessary stress to somebody's life. But I agree. I think if somebody's not happy without, they're not going to be happy with it. I don't think it's the cure, but I think as a whole, as a tool, it does. That transaction is essentially that, because if not, what are you transacting for? Not to be miserable, I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think talking through this is probably the best way to figure that out, right? It's like, when am I buying happiness? When am I complementing the life I have? So it's like, if you're trying to distract yourself from reality with using money, then I think you're probably buying happiness, and it's worth looking into, how you can fix the underlying issue. If you're complementing your life, flying in your niece, going on a dinner date with your wife, not to distract yourself, but because you want to do a nice thing for the two of you. You want to spend some time together, or you want to do a pizza night with your kid or a movie night, whatever. And it's just complementing the life you have. I don't think it's buying happiness. But that's where, let's say you have a great week, but you don't have the money to go see that movie that your kid has been asking to go see for 2 weeks, and you don't have the money. That will bring misery. You will feel terrible about yourself. So that
would be not buying happiness.
If you go see that movie, for example,
if you can't.
I don't know if I understand the question.
So if you can't afford it,
like what if you can't?
What if you can't afford it? Would that go into the category of I can't buy Like it's not triggering happiness because I can't do it.
Let's say you can't afford to go see the movie and you still do, then it's almost the opposite. You're buying misery, because for sure you're going to be more miserable because you just spent a couple $100 basically on something you should probably use to pay the electricity bill. So yeah, I think that's probably just bad financial decision. But then you could argue that the reason there's financial trouble is because of the bad decisions you're making. So that
do you think it comes down, because I've been thinking a lot about this, because we even stopped asking this question for some time in the podcast, because I felt like everybody thinks different, right? But nobody really understood the question. In what sense? I feel it comes down to sometimes the insecurity of the person answering that question, to the point that they might think they're going to get judged for that answer, and instead of just going into the fact of what can you do with it? What can you do with that tool? What is it going to trigger? What are you going to feel when you do it? And of course, the way we ask the question probably sounds bad to answer yes, you can, because we're saying, can you buy happiness? But it comes from a place of you should already be happy to be able to use that tool to just keep, feeling that way.
It's tricky. It's tricky because we don't come from money, right? So we don't come from money. But I've always been I've always reminded myself, I don't need money to be happy. You know what I mean? And me the same without and with, just amplified with. But for me, that little bit more stable now, I feel like for me, it buys, I don't know, man. Happiness is a tricky thing, because happiness, I think you got to always remind yourself to be happy.
Yeah, nobody's happy all the time, whether your circumstances are perfect or not.
Yeah, exactly. To look around.
Down.
But for me, I mean, it buys, to me, personally, it buys happiness all the time. But then I say it, and now in my brain, I think
it's because we're wired.
You know what I think? I think that I'm gonna sound a certain way, when I say that.
Which is what I just said.
I don't mean it in
I really don't care.
I don't
just say that.
But what I mean is this: if I don't know, if let's say holidays are coming up, and I can afford to give you something small. It could be anything, a little coffee bag, anything. That transact, right? That thing that I was able to do, because it brings me happiness. Hey, I'd like to, you're a friend of mine here, but even though I can do it in other ways, to be able to do it the way that I want to do it is what brings me the happiness,
I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with the question because it's such a basic instinct. Having resources is one of our basic instincts. We have to have resources to survive, just like we need a partner, just like the food we eat, for example, right? And so if somebody's performing well in that area, I think they're pretty comfortable speaking about it. If they're not, they're going to be somewhat uncomfortable answering that question. It's I'm going to say something controversial. The person who's watching their diet all the time, and they spend time rejecting the things they want to eat but don't for their health and so forth. If you ask them, what do you eat on a daily basis? They'll go on for hours telling you all the things they eat and how they do it and the supplements they take and so forth. Whereas somebody who might have kind of slipped up for the last couple of years, and you ask them that question, well, now you're borderline insulting almost, it's tricky. So that's why that question is very sensitive, because how you're performing in that area is going to either fuel your confidence and getting to display the hard work and the grit you put towards it, or it's going to expose your weakness.
It's such a tricky question. I feel like that question can be a whole podcast in itself, if you really break it down from the top. But it's just very, very interesting, with that question. And everybody, I think we're we've always been told like it doesn't. It doesn't buy happiness.
I think you can also make somebody feel happy with the hug, right? But you can also make them feel happy with the $100.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I never seen anybody.
You know what it is about
sad
it? You know what it
winning
is?
The lottery.
Like money it's just a piece of paper,
Yeah.
right? It has no emotion to it, but we bring a lot of emotion to it. Like,
so I think
that answer.
I think what you said, you can make people happy with a hug, make people happy with $100. I think it depends on what they need in that moment.
Yeah.
If they need a hug, they're going to be happy with it. If you do it to a random stranger in the grocery store, they're probably going to look at you and be like, "Get your hands off me."
Yeah. Yeah.
And same with $100. If I give it to somebody who needs it, they're going to be ecstatic. If I give it to Jeff Bezos, you're going to look at me like, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
So it's all about, what does that person need, and try to be meaningful in your gift.
Right. And what's kind of wrapping up a little bit? Is there anything that we didn't touch on business wise regarding your business that you'd like to mention?
I mean, there's 1,001 things we could continue to go on and on about. We'd be here for 3.5 hours, basically. I think a big one in our business is, the candidate portion of it, the candidate experience, and even to bring it back to the conversation that we're having about feeling proud to speak about something or whatever. It can be circled back to, for example, a candidate experience. If I ask a candidate who spent, 4 hours preparing for this interview, and I then ask them that question, "Hey, tell me a little bit about the company you're interviewing for. Tell me what you already know," for example. Well, they'll go on for a half hour saying all the things they read about and why they're excited to sit here in front of me to speak about this position and how it applies to their skills and so forth. Whereas if you ask that question to someone who took the last 5 minutes, if that, just reading through a job description, and you ask them, "Hey, tell me a little bit about the company you're interviewing for. What do you already know?" Well, you're exposing their weakness, and they could get defensive. They could feel like, "Why are you putting me on the spot?" So I think grit, discipline, preparation, whatever you do, is going to translate into confidence in a happier life. You're going to perform better, and you will have kept the promises you made to yourself, which results in, I think, just a better feeling of yourself. So
Perfect.
Perfect.
I love it.
Yeah. No, I think it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, 100%. I'm enjoying this. Like I said, I could go on for 2 more hours, but we got things.
Yeah, maybe we do a part 2.
We got things to do. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
For sure.